Uh, hey, what's up everyone? This is Captain Awesome. I'm going to be doing something a little different today. This is something I've been sort of wary of doing, because when I first came onto YouTube, this is sort of what I planned on doing, which is like the intellectual blog. So I'm gonna get down and nerdy with you guys. I'm filling in the little social patterns, as the amazing atheist would say, and because I feel like now there's a need for it, since Gisborne left and Mr. Morden hasn't really been doing much for a while. What I am going to do today is answer historically the question, why monotheism? Why is monotheism so prevalent today? Now what the theist will tell you is because there is of course one true God, and he is invisible, everywhere, omnipresent, omniscient, and it's truth, so monotheism has spread that way. But in fact, that is not the case. There are very good historical reasons for why monotheism has spread. If we examine monotheism, the Judeo-Christian God was not always a monotheistic God, and certainly not always this omnipresent God that it is today. Originally, and if you read the Bible, in Genesis, God walks into the garden with Adam and cannot see them, clearly not omniscient there, and also not a monotheistic God originally. For example, when Moses became a convert to the Jewish God, he made his staff appear into serpents, and then the wizards of the Pharaoh's court made their staffs into serpents also, and Moses' staff just ate theirs because their God was the greater God. And also, if you look at the very first commandment of the Ten Commandments, it says, "I am a jealous God, and have no other gods before me." I mean, thus making the obvious implication there are other gods. In fact, the Old Testament is sort of rife with mentions of other gods and people worshiping other gods. And it's only later with Paul in the New Testament that people start to imply that there is only one God. That's not really what I want to talk about. What we're going to talk about is why monotheism spreads so rapidly when it came about. And the basic answer is because polytheism tends to be non-proselytizing. That is, they do not want to take over and enforce their God or gods on other people. It is much more likely for a polytheistic culture to be accepting of someone else's God. And this is proven many times in history. For example, when the missionaries brought Jesus to the New World, the American Indians there initially accepted them as a basis of, oh, there's your God, great, that God exists, it's just one of our many gods, because polytheists oftentimes have to exist among other polytheists, so it's very convenient to accept the gods of your neighbors. So polytheism, most of the time, is not proselytizing, and it's not going to go out and try to enforce our gods as, if you have a view of the universe as one filled with many gods, then all gods are likely. There's no room, there's no real conflict with the fact that, because we have many gods for everything, well, and our neighbors have many gods, there's no real conflict in the existence of their gods. But if you have a monotheistic view, then there is obviously a great deal of conflict. Because monotheism is clearly not, well, as polytheistic religions, say Hinduism, can be compatible with other polytheistic religions. Their gods could exist, sure, and in fact also compatible with monotheistic religions. Take Hinduism and the American Indian religions, both have some traditions accepting Jesus as a god, not necessarily the God, or accepting the Christian God, Jehovah, as a god that exists. And this also goes for some polytheistic Lamanists in Tibet and some other places. Also have a tradition of accepting Jesus as a Buddha-like figure, one of many enlightened figures, or sometimes one of many gods, if it happens to be theistic Buddhists. A monotheist, on the other hand, is not likely to accept their gods. If you take an example of Cortez landing landing in the Aztecs. They're not obviously going to accept these gods. They're just going to view them as pagans because they don't accept one God. There is only one God. It is our God, and so we must go out and slaughter and kill. By that method, monotheism naturally spreads to places. The way it didn't spread early on. Now you may say, well, monotheism has been around for 5,000 to 8,000 years, depending on how exactly you want to date it with the Jews. And that's not entirely true, actually, because originally Yahweh was only one of many gods in the Jewish tradition. He was just the chief god, and it's only later on that it sort of became a monotheistic god. Well, that's not going to spread because then it wasn't really even viewed as like the God of everyone. It was viewed as the God of the Jewish people, you know, who thought of themselves as the chosen people. Well, obviously, when Paul came around, it was suddenly the God of everyone, and he felt the need. The worst thing that ever happened to monotheism was that he felt the need that then God was now everybody's God. Worst thing that ever happened, because that means, well, if God is everybody's God and not just the God of the Jewish people, then everybody needs to worship and praise God. And so, if everybody needs to worship and praise God and all other gods are false, then it has a natural tendency to spread, and a natural tendency to cause war, because you see these pagans around you, and you see these people, you know, praising imaginary gods. then you want to go out and put a stop to that and make sure those people worship your one God. Whereas with polytheistic gods, if you see them worshiping multiple gods, you see them worshiping gods different than you, well, hey, that's just what you're doing. So it's not incompatible. It wasn't until monotheism took on this characteristic of being not just one of many gods, but being the only one, that you actually see the spread of it. And particularly as the Roman Empire started to become Christianized. I mean, you had powerful kingdoms that were monotheistic before that in Judea, but it didn't spread because it wasn't viewed as the God of everybody. It was viewed as our God. So there's no reason to spread it into everybody. But when you have one all-powerful God, you have a motivation behind spreading to everybody. And this is also seen across other empires. It's only the conquering monotheistic religions that tend to leave behind their religion where they go. So if you look at Islam, and when they went through Northern Africa, they left Islam in Northern Africa, wiping out the pagan gods that were worshipped there as incompatible with Islam. Now, if you take similar conquering empires that weren't monotheistic, and I'm going to use the Mongols as an example. The Mongols were shamanist with many gods, the chief of whom were a sky god. And Mongols, when they swept through the world, they in fact left the regional religions intact. Many of them actually converted to various regional religions. Higalu Khan became a Buddhist after right before he slaughtered the entire population of Baghdad, and the Golden Horde later converted to Islam, and there were even Mongols that were Christians. There's good evidence that some of the Mongols that invaded Japan were in fact Christian. They found the Christian cross on the helm of some Mongols fairly recently. It was a fairly recent archaeological find, suggesting that the Mongols were the first Christians in Japan. Interesting little historical tidbit there. But the point is, a polytheistic religion, a shamanist religion like the Mongols, does not leave its religion behind. And this is the same case as, let's say, the Greeks, when Alexander the Great spread throughout Central Asia and throughout Greece. It's pretty much the pattern over and over and over and over again. And monotheistic conquerors, if you're going to look at the Spanish in Central and South America, and what happens? They convert the people to there. They violently convert the people to there. And the same with the British and to the American Indians here in North America. It was conversions, sometimes violent conversions of them. whereas the polytheists were not interested in spreading their religion. Hey, and this isn't an endorsement of polytheism. Obviously, polytheism is completely ridiculous, but this is more of an answering of why has monotheism spread. It's because by a characteristic, and actually a very bad characteristic, of one God being the only God and uncompromising only God, other cultures unacceptable, that is what causes it to spread, not any sort of truth that lies behind it. And it's historically proven, and that's why monotheism is prevalent today.